Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good evening for you. Allow me at the beginning of this lecture to thank greatly His Excellency Dr. Jamal Sanad al-Suwaidi, who has given me the honor by inviting me for the Emirates Center for Strategic and Political Studies in order to address you about the art of reading literature and its role in serving humanity, how to read and how to love reading and how to read the texts with love. Also, I would like to extend my thanks for His Excellency Ambassador Dr. Turki Adekhail, who has given me the honor by attending this lecture. I would like to give you a story. It is related that one man has sent his son for some scholars in order to teach him. That boy learned and has become a scholar as well. And when he came back to his father tried to test to what extent he has learned knowledge. So he held a ring in his hand. Tell me, what do I have in my fist? The boy, who has got a number of knowledge, told him, the thing that you have in your hand is circular, it's hollow, and it is made of gold. And actually, these are the real description of the thing that he has in his hand. So the father said, as you have given me the right description, now you need to decide what is that. He told him it might be a sniffle. So the father said, right, you have given these important features of that objective. So how can a sniffle, how didn't you realize that a sniffle couldn't be done, could be kept in my hand? And this story has been given in one of the books for Galal Arumi. What we learn from this story is that boy who has knowledge has used his knowledge honestly to interpret that thing that was kept in the fist of the hand of his father. Yet using scientific standards alone couldn't help to distinguish between the gold ring and the wooden sniffle. This is the situation actually for our Arab critics, and I am one of them, who think that because of their learning of methodologies of critics, that makes them very good critics. They do not read actually. So yet sometimes they disregard what makes the critic a good reader is something more than just the knowledge of the methodologies of critic. That is the passion for reading. That does not mean that we should disregard these methodologies, but we should keep them in mind, but to think further and to use further methodologies. So just using the methodology that makes us read with the lens of the methodology itself. So in my opinion, such critics have led to losing a lot of things in understanding the texts especially what has been written in the last quarter of the past century, they would have found a certain reference to what we have nowadays in our communities, and they could have also tell us about this from the very beginning. So this point of research actually has come up recently. That is how to serve the community. The criticism should go further from an aesthetic point of study to how to serve the community in understanding civilization. So the critic is a sensitive person for the pulses of the community and how to serve the community. And when we open a book, that means we open a window of our reality, our situations, and that help us to understand the good points in order to improve them, and to see the drawbacks in order to delimit those drawbacks. After this introduction, my attempt will try to answer three questions. The first, why do we read literature? It seems that it is an easy question. The second question, how a literary text is composed of. The third question, how to read literature, which is more important for me in this attempt. Why do we read literature? Somebody might say we read it in order to enjoy it and to give us a spiritual joy. In fact, this is a substantial answer, as literature includes a number of beauties and comfortability, yet it is not just points of beauties, but it also includes a number of values, social, political, and economical values, like the nationalism, tolerance, freedom, benevolence, helping the others, so many values like that. And these values are characterized that they are fixed in their concepts. So goodness stays as it is goodness. But what we used to see something as good in the past century is no longer with the same understanding today. For example, having women to work in the past century, it was good to keep it at home. Now the good is to send her for work. So the goodness is still the goodness, but the feature of this goodness, it changes from one time to another. So each community needs a certain person. It might be a politician, it might be a thinker, it might be an intellectual, in order to assure the content of such values and to support them into the community. As Sartre says, the writer, when he writes what he says, and when he says, he practices what he says. And he's not like an artist who just keeps contemplating without giving any alternatives for the actual situation in the community. The second question is the writer is just influenced by a certain situation, and just he starts writing about it. Actually, the literary text is composed of three texts. Each of them is connected to the other. That is the reality, the text of reality, the text of the reader, and the text of the writer. The text of reality is just general. It's not owned by a certain person, and it is always changing. And that is the actual situation for each community. And whenever we think that we understood it, we find that we did not understand it properly. That is because of such changes that happens in the community every now and then. So the current situation keeps changing all the time. So this movement represents its a magic and its a continuity, and that raises the question, to what extent do we understand it? It is a text that's not written by a certain person, it is written by everyone in relation to the different roles of different sciences, like biology, like sociology, like, and so many other sciences. So this text, by the end of the day, is something that is that could be influenced by the writer himself. So a writer is just a person who just volunteered to tell the community about the beauty, and and wishes to write about the values by means of linguistics and the means of literature. So most of us cannot cannot predict what is there in the text, because they are all hidden with the means of literature. And he's not just writing a story or an essay just to waste the time, but he writes it because he has interacted with the situation and the community and the status of the people and the community. So he has his own purpose. So I cannot just write a story about France while I'm living in Tunisia. It wouldn't be proper. I cannot I cannot write except about the community that I'm living in. For example, uh, the the writers who have immigrated to the West, they write in Arabic in a French tongue. So he cannot even write out of his own culture. He might write for people of different culture, but he will use his own culture. We might migrate geographically, but culturally we cannot migrate. There is also the main point, that is the purpose of writing. So any written text has its own purpose. It might not be clear, but it is still there. We are writing about the reality of the people and the reality of the community. So the writer takes the community to a certain world, and is writing about the values and about the situation and the community, in order to take the community to a further step. That is, that's to take the reader to a global view, and to raise the proper questions about the community. So in our literature, we might find some literary men who are just moving into the streets and roaming into the streets. One of the writers who used to used to be venturous. He used to participate in any demonstrations. Just he's volunteering himself for the community in order to create a meaning into that atmosphere. And whatever the size of his imagination, he cannot imagine something out of the current situation. He cannot write something out of the reality of the community. And the most he can do is just to condemn some elements of the community in order to invent certain models that might be interpreted later on in order to clarify what is hidden in the community, and in order to improve the situation of the community. Remember the story of the winged horse. So we have a horse, and the horse has his own wings. And actually, this is a new structure for done by the writer. So we are trying to invent, but with realistic elements. We cannot invent out of the reality. So in order to understand things, we need to link that to the community. So the writer imagines and invents out of his knowledge of the community. And through his assimilation into the community. So the effort of the writer is a defense systematology for the community in order to take the community to up, upgrades. So he takes us and he reminds us of the elements of goodness. The writer is similar to somebody who is just watching a TV, a football match. He cannot be sympathetic with the defeated team. So the writer is always looking for what is beautiful. He's trying to find a certain value to be triumphing into the community. The writer is also invited to understand the phenomenon that prevail into the community with patience, with patience that help him to think deeply. That is the real spirit of literature. And also he has the intelligence in order to delve into the real status of the community, to understand them. Here, I would like to refer to something that is the writer is not a teacher. He's just renovating his awareness of the reality. He's trying all the time to renovate his understanding of the reality. So the text he's writing is not just a teaching text or a preaching text. So just to keeping himself as responsible for the goodness, that means he is not involved. He's just involved in writing a text to help the people to have the trend towards goodness, and this is that might be the work of the preacher, not the writer. The preacher might say, "Have patience against hunger, that you might have enough food into the paradise." But for the writer, the situation is different. So he tells his reader, or tells the community, to try to create the heaven into your community, not just to wait for the heavenly paradise. That is actually the text of the writer. And in relation to the text of the reader, so the writer took the text from the community. Now we come to the role of the reader who reads this text. The, the most dangerous prison in the world is a closed book. The agonies of the countries and the people keeps the people imprisoned into corruption of the community. but the text is trying to takes the people into this situation, this atmosphere that the writer is creating for the reader. As Al has said, the book is always silent unless you make it speak. So this is the the secret of rhetorics of literature. It is the text of the writer to the readers to tell them to embrace the values in order to liberate themselves from their materialistic existence. So a book about love might be kept away on one shelf while it is in fact is there, but is there in a lost atmosphere, as if it is not there, but it is in fact it is there. So in order to revive this book, it's just you need to read it. So unless we read the books lose their value despite the content of those books. Here comes the role of the reader and the critic, that is to explore the values of the writer, to take them from the text to the real community, to take them from idealism to realism. And in order to clarify the relationship between these three texts, we have the real text, or the reality text. It speaks about certain phenomena into the community that has influenced the writer to write about them. So while he is writing, he refers to what is wrong and how to correct this wrongness into the community. And that wouldn't be beneficial unless it's handled by a reader and a critic. Uh, so the circle goes again back to the community. So from the writer to the reader, the critic, and to the community again. The third question, which is more important, is how to read literature in order to invest what is there in order to reform our communities. Actually, what derived me to speak about this is at least what I've read into the Arabic critics. Actually, they care a lot about structuralism of the text and the formation of the text. So actually, these things are important for understanding the text, but they are not the only tools to understand the text. And I've never seen any critic in the Arab world to say that this text is calling for so and so, and it tells us about so and so. Most of the Arab critics have their own certain tools that they use for understanding the text. And even if it is not straightforward for the text, they try to twist the text in order to make it proper for their own tools, and to tell the people what they would like to tell the people and not what the text wants to tell the people. I would like to give you an example of that. There is a long essay about Al Jazeera Al Ghamida, or the hidden island, or the mysterious island. Actually, I've read this novel while I was reading a research in the university. It was written by Bartos, and actually the essay was speaking about something that is not there in the story itself, because he was looking just for the, and he was trying to find things that he's interested in, and he disregarded something very important. That means he said something out of the text that is not there in the text. That's what happens actually in the Arab world situation regarding criticism. So how to read literature in order to serve our community, I would like to say that when a person reads, actually he loves, he should love that text. That means he needs to expand his understanding of the world out of his own being. In that case, he would become the collective person representing the whole community. So reading is just a form of connecting the person with the world. It's not just a physical migration. It is to recall the outside world to our being. So when I read a certain book, I recall this world that the book speaks about to myself. So the relationship between the reader and the book is the relation of love, the relation of passion that would take the person to the outer atmosphere, the wider atmosphere, to experience something new. So even the person feels that he himself has a paradise inside himself. And even this paradise doesn't mean that he has a certain body to stand on the gate of that paradise. So to go through this gate is just easy by reading. So reading and love are something that is controversial among different persons. People have spoken about this so many times, including Abyssinia. But the what but what I have found is that this relationship has been clear in two books. The first one was the philosopher Rebel, about the Baron writing. And in the sixth chapter, he has spoken about this concept and about the concept of isolation and the love for writing and reading in relation to this isolation, and that would be improved in 1965. The second book is for Montbard, Le Visite du Texte, or The Joy of the Text. This book speaks about the joyfulness of the reader for the text. For me, I would like to add something. The violent text that has been published in 2020, and it has a number of solutions for reading. What is more likable for a person is love. So I say, what that kind of love that is more than love. And here I have two things. The first comes from Plato, as he said, what we do not have, what we are not, what we lack are the topics of desire. That is the topic of love. So if we try to translate this for Plato, we can say that love means desire, and the desire means lack. So we do not love something unless we lack that thing. This meaning also has been given by Abyssinia, as he says, in each objective there is a sort of love, of instinctive love. He says that we love what makes us like love. So the matter of love for Plato has been discussed, especially for the French critic François Vry. He put things into opposite side. If we if we sub, if we satisfy our desire, that means love is no longer there, and that is what we call as a platonic love. So love is not something to be achieved easily. If we can say that there is a young man or a young woman who have loved each other, or one of them loved the other, according to Plato, that person showed his love according to his desire for marrying the other person. So love here is the desire for marriage. So let us let us so so once the desire is no longer there, that means that love is no longer there also. So the second idea is what has been discussed, that is love means desire, and desire means happiness, and that is what I benefit from Plato and Spinoza, that is to, to search to satisfy what we lack, and in order to achieve happiness. And with that, I would like to end my talk. Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Salami, for this valuable lecture. Now the floor is open for the attendees in order to pose their questions. Thank you, Dr. Abdul Salami. Actually, we are in need of such a sort of lectures. Thank you very much for this lecture. Also, I would like to extend my thanks for the center, the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, as the center opens the door for further knowledge and the further researches. Here, I would like to pose the question: do you mean is reading just restricted to reading literature alone? So you think that while I'm driving and reading the distance in front of me is a sort of reading. If a pastor is grazing his sheep into the desert and is looking into the sky, isn't this a sort of reading? What is also the relation between reading and writing? If reading is death and writing if writing is death and reading is life, so the more we read, the more we live. Now, in relation to as you are a critic, the size of published stories, novels into the Arab world, is this a healthy phenomena or no? Into the Arab cultural legacy, when we say when we have poetry about love. So when those poets tell us about the Arabian environment, here the relationship among the people, aren't there something more than the desire? Thank you for your listening, and actually you have given me bravery, as I'm used to be shy all the time. As for your question, sir, the concept of reading, is it just restricted for literary works? Actually, reading is something more general than that. It's general that covers all works of life. When you when you come to your home and try to hide something that happened to you when you were outside, your wife will read your face. And even the child read the reality. He looks for what's happening outside, and they might ask his mother to give him a coat, a raincoat, or something like that. So even writing after reading, and even technology helps us in writing, but for reading it is not done by any other element or in other technology. It is only you who reads. In relation to that big number of publications of novels and the stories, actually they are very big, and I've written an essay about that. Now we have a lot of novels, and also a little number of novels, because the competition here is comes under two wishes. The first is to win a prize, and the literary prizes, despite my respect for the noble objective of such awards, these prizes have become something against the art of novels itself. As one of the Sudanese writers told me that he has been asked by a certain person who was asking him, how can I write a story to win a prize? The other point is that there are certain publishing houses that are working just profitably. So they do not have their own objective for serving the art of writing, that they do not have a committee of referees in order to judge the text before publishing it. So it is just publishing it just for profitability. Such novels are now prevailing into the community, unfortunately. As for the desire and the love and the relationship between these two elements, actually, I've given two definition for love. The Platonic definition for love is that the unachievable love. That is the Platonic love. And the love for Spinoza. Spinoza tried. Spinoza is a good reader for Plato. He tried to liberate Plato from such point. He tried to, instead of making the reason for love is the desire, he said that the reason for love is the search for happiness. As happiness is related to something outside us. That is according to Spinoza. Also, there are other definitions that I didn't come to in this lecture. Your Excellency, my name is Turki Dikhil. Thank you very much for this lecture. I was speaking to you days ago about an idea, the idea of education, and education into the Arab world. And this great center, which one of the brides of the Arab world, that has been established into throughout the last quarter of the past century, under the sponsorship of His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed and under the chairmanship of Dr. Jamal al-Suwaidi. They have considered this problem, how education in the Arab world focuses on knowledge without morals. And then we find ourselves that we have given certain concepts for people without teaching them morals. So they have gone to the streets and have learned the morals from the streets. So the morals of the streets have influenced the, the concepts of knowledge. Can you elaborate on this topic, please? This point might be related to the topic of the lecture, but it's important. Yes, it's important because it's related to the topic of reading. Thank you, Your Excellency, Dr. Turki Dekhil. Actually, reading is much connected of the earlier years of our life, and I might attribute the desire for reading and the lack of reading in Arab world is that we do not supply our children with the proper readings. The curricula is done by certain technocrats, and what's important is they just mean for giving a certain piece of knowledge, like a grammatical piece of knowledge, or and so on. So such texts achieves the educational objective and not the literary objective. And literature is related to morals. That's on one side. On the other side, certain educational curricula that I have come through are keen to provide the reasons for scientific knowledge. So education in the early life of the child focuses on the mathematics and science topics without giving moral concepts for the children. So at a certain period of age, like adolescence, for example, we find that those children have a certain level of knowledge about what type of morals they enjoy. It is the morals of the street, and if we try to redeem this, we fail. What the situation, in my opinion, that is that the Arab approach has to focus on teaching the children the morals, and then comes the knowledge. The morals are related to how to maintain the school tools, how to help the community, how to help his own colleagues. Such type of morals should be realistic. It should be taken out of its philosophical atmosphere to the realistic atmosphere. So when that person, when that child comes to the street, he becomes immunized. He becomes able to love his community, to love his the national anthem. Actually, many of a lot of our children, they do not love the national anthem because they have just been taught how to recite it, but not how to love it. Because I used to be a teacher, and when I see the students reading or reciting the national anthem, they are some of students are reading a part, while the other part of the students are reading a different part of the national anthem. So I'm posing this question in order to attract certain proposals for handling such a matter. Thank you, Dr. Abdel Salami, for this valuable lecture. In fact, when I decided to attend this lecture, uh, in my mind that you are going to speak about critics. Criticism, literary criticism in this Arab world has its own crises and its own problems. It's not only the matter of morals. The critic is the one who makes the literary text lovable or unlovable for the reader. The real crisis is that we do not have real critics. On the contrary, the critics that we have is just useless, just a voice for the power, or expresses a certain degree of grudge or reflecting misunderstanding for the literary text that the critic is writing about. This is the real problem nowadays in the Arab world. Now we have a lot of novelists and a lot of poets. Everybody is just writing. So we have a lot of writing that everything is lost. And we cannot distinguish what's beneficial and what's not beneficial, what is serving the community and what is harming the community. And I've read a number of texts that artistically are on high level, but they are against the morals of the community. The topic of Arab literary criticism nowadays is actually is not comfortable, and I need you to give us a sort of evaluation for the criticism situation in the Arab world. Thank you very much for your questions. I've spoken a lot about the critics, and I tried not to speak about them here in this lecture. It is true that the critic makes the text lovable for us. I'm supposed to give the next part of the second part of this lecture, but I don't have the time. So the reader has to learn how to dissolve into the text, how to relive the text, and to understand the meanings of the text, and turning them into indications to be given for the community. Actually, what we have nowadays just critic groups write about me, and I will write about you, and I will invite you for a banquet, and you invite me for a banquet, and of course you are aware of that. Actually, the situation also for the novelists and for the poets. In the past, we used to say the poets die while their poems keep living into the community. Nowadays, this concept is no longer there. While for the ancient people like Antara, their poems are still living into the communities. So most of the Arab poetry nowadays is just industrial. I mean, it's just written as an industry and not something genuine. It doesn't have its own solidity in relation to the meanings that it reflects. By the end of this, to conclude this session, I would like to extend my thanks for His Excellency Gamal Sanad al-Suwaidi, the chairman of the Emirates Center for Strategic Studies and Research, and also my thanks for Dr. Abdeldaim Salami. And we hope to meet you again in the near future. Thank you very much.